Hey player, part 2 of the video series here on Soul Force and Soul Force related stuff. So the last video we covered your gates, um, and I think like something that I missed out on a little bit was each of these things can be trained independently, and each of them when training them, offer different benefits. Your gates are going to be your overall power level. Like that's the more you can kind of flex them to expand to allow yourself to access more power. Like that's going to be more that you're going to have access to at any given time. Like I said, the this phase in your character, like the first phase is about the breakthrough. The second phase is about controlling what you have access to. Like you have more than you in your body generally knows what to do with. And like I said, if there's a third phase, then the third phase probably has to deal with something altogether different. But like this phase, like it's entirely it's not a matter of pushing limits. It's a matter of holding yourself back from hurting yourself. Um, yeah. So with that said, each thing, like I said, training it gives you different benefits. Like the gate control is very much like your core kind of training, like being able to manipulate those gates to be able to allow a proper amount or more out without actually damaging yourself. Um, yeah. So onwards and upwards, aura is the next aspect and the next pillar of Soul Force. This is Akarui. This is your. It's all like roughly translates to like your bright or your brightness. Um, and Akari is also the race of the people that created you. I don't know if you've got that information yet, but it seems like it's a happy coincidence. But you do know like that their name roughly translates to the bright ones. So uh, given that they were like kind of energy beings, it makes sense. Um, but Akari deals with three subsections: infusion, projection, and manipulation. So infusion is something that I think we've talked about before. In this universe, you don't power up; you infuse. So you take a portion of the energy that's coming from inside you, and then you infuse it into your cells. Um, and it's like one of those ones where I guess like from the outside, like how do I direct each individual cells? It's like it's kind of like breathing and stuff like that. It's like it's a natural occurrence that you can do through force of will. Like it's not something that's overly difficult to do, but it's also difficult to control in the sense that you can't push yourself too far. Like if your body accepts, like let's say, I think we've talked about this a little bit before, but like no one normally operates at 100%. So when the DM gives you like your speed stat or something like that, that 100% is something you're unlikely to hit just because your mind and your body is going to slow you down. Like you basically at that full sprint like that, you have a chance of like wiping out, like hurting yourself, like all like that. Like you generally hold yourself back a little bit because like at that absolute 100% peak is where like you're one step away from like falling over. So it's like usually you'll knock it back anywhere between 80% to 60%, sometimes as low as 40%, depending on a couple of your stats. There's a couple factors that determine it, but infusion specifically is the act of powering yourself up. So like usually like the soul force that you have around you is just kind of like this flowing stuff. It's there, but whenever you infuse it into yourself, it's like you're concentrating it, and you're concentrating it inside your cells. Like every cell in your body awakens, so it does awaken everything about you, like your perception, your mind. Speed and strength are the obvious ones. Like you become more durable. Your muscles tire much slower. You gain like natural passive regeneration to like wounds and stuff like that. It might not be like you have a major gash and it just kind of steams off, and then like you see it instantly heal. But it might be able to get to that point with proper, like with the right energy and with enough experience with that kind of thing. But like that's just, it's like this is all kind of like passively happening. So whenever you try to tackle infusion, what you basically do is say, DM, I basically infuse myself, or you can say I power up. And like I said, it's the same as it is in other games, but like that's just what it's called. And this is something that from some of your reading outside of what you discovered. Like infusion is something that people are familiar with. Like I said, not it's not common, but like you managed to piece together. Uh, and what it kind of does is it expands. It's not so much it expands outward, but it's like it grows in intensity. Like you're whenever you awaken yourself, like you're naturally infused by about like we'll say 5 to 15%. So like just the act of like awakening yourself, like that gets it, and then from there you can start to push it up. Now when you say DM, I take it to 100%. You'll take it to 100% of whatever your body allows you to, and then you might be able to push your body a little bit further. But it's like it's one of those ones where you might only be taking it to 60 or 80% of what you actually can do, but where your body kind of stops you from going any further. Now you might be able to push it to like 82, 83, 85%, or you might get 81%, or you might stay at 80%. Like that's just something you'll have to work on as things go. Um, yeah. The infusion's pretty straightforward. Like I said, you're familiar enough with powering up in other games. Like I said, it covers. I want to say it covers everything with your body. Like it doesn't do. I mean, like I said, obviously it doesn't help your projection because the projection is the next thing. But and it doesn't help your abilities, like any ability you have or anything like that that uses soul force. Like for you, it would be your auras, your omega eye beams, your annihilation blast, like stuff like that. Infusion doesn't improve that in any way. It's more physical, but like also any like physical is also covers mental in this case because it's still part of your body, like your biological self. I guess biological is the best way to say it. So infusion improves that. Um, it's something that you've worked on to some degree, like because being a legion, being a member of the legion race, physicality like that is very important to you. Um, so like the better you can, and the better you can kind of infuse yourself, the stronger you can get. What's his name? Sovereign is much better when it comes to infusion than you. Like it's the gap has widened a bit between the two of you in that regard, whereas his body is a much better vessel for soul force than yours is at this point, and you're pretty sure you know why, player. Like you look back to some of those stats you picked and everything like that. Like yeah, you feel like based on what you know on how Sovereign acts in life, like how intensely he trains, how physical he is, like he's probably made himself a better vessel. And it's one of those, it's like an exponential growth thing where it's like the further you push your body with your physical limits, the better you're able to actually infuse yourself, and then you get like that exponential jump out of it. Um, with that in mind, there's like kind of like an interesting thing that you've figured out is like you don't actually need to. There's a point where you will, but there's a wide expanse where you don't need to actually power up to train yourself. Like you have to take yourself basically to I think what is a 6 in any physical stat before you would have to actually start infusing yourself to push it further. Because like I said, 6 is peak for your race. 7 is like mystical, and then 8 is like the full unleashed thing. So it's like if you want to hit something or 7 or 8, like that's where you probably have to pushing your infusions higher. Whereas like before that, like you can just be doing push-ups in your normal state and be pushing yourself further, and it might be safer, it might be better that way, it might allow a more natural growth. Like you're not sure of all the benefits of it, but like it seems like it doesn't seem like it's overly advantageous to you to just like power up and strength train from there, because it's like you're artificially inflating yourself, whereas if you raise your lower limits you're better off than pushing your upper limits by potentially injuring yourself in the process. Infusion, like I said, that's pretty much what infusion is. Projection is what you would think it is. Projection, well, that'll say that. It is your ability to summon and project energy for various purposes. Usually, destructive or defensive in nature is the two most common. Now, like I said, manipulation. I'll kind of give you the quick rundown here. Manipulation is how well you actually fuel your techniques. Like now, these are techniques are very different from like raw state stuff. Like so, let's see here. Bear with me here, player. So stuff like your shotgun blast, your energy ball, your I beams, that's projection. Like that's a base level technique. It deals with how much energy you can muster up. So like if you say 100% of your energy, you at this point, it's not about, you'll never use 100% of your energy reserves to fire a blast. Like even if you're powering something up for a while, like you just don't have that level of experience with projection. So and like I said, there's a bit of an overlap between projection and manipulation. Like the better you are at projection, uh, and then you have abilities that project, like that carries over there. But like yeah, like your basic things like your shotgun blast, like which is basically a short range blast, your energy ball, your I beams, your soulfire matrix, your soulfire aura, uh, your regenerative trance is to an extent. Yeah, I guess we'll put that in a projection. Soul flight. Uh, yeah, we'll say I think that's about it. Like those basic things that you do that basically comes with being a superpowered being, where it's like you can kind of manipulate your raw energy to do what you might want to do it with. That's your projection rating, and the better you get with it, the more impressive your blasts get, or the more impressive your like basic defensive abilities get. Because like that's kind of one of the big advantages of going an awakened individual is you don't have to worry about being like oh like I guess like I said, I think we described it as like the generation factor, where it's like someone has something that just inherently counters you. Now those things out there can still exist, but I want to say that they're a bit more rare. Usually, like whenever you're doing stuff, whenever like you're being influenced by something, like it's going to influence you, but it's not going to finish you. You're going to have like a natural resistance to it, or you're going to be able to project some sort of barrier to it through your like basically your soul force shielding you in some way. So it's kind of a universal defense, but that it can be broken, it can be overwhelmed. So that's why it's important to train projection. And it's also like how well you can project against others. So it's kind of like let's say you're a 5 and someone else is a 4. It's like you might be able to overwhelm them with blast, but like if they're a 5 and you're a 4, like you might not ever actually be able to overwhelm them. Like your blast might weaken them down, but like they might never actually break as a result of them. Like you might have to do it like with your hands and your fists and stuff like that. So like that's something like to think about with projection. Like it's a universal offense and defense kind of techniques that you'll get. How well you manipulate your energy in its raw forms. The last thing is manipulation. Manipulation specifically deals with fueling your abilities and techniques. These are your annihilation blasts, these are your omega I beams, these are your omega flares, your omega crushes, everything like that. Like it's the finesse that allows you to manipulate your soul force into abilities that might not be native to your soul force. So it's like, here's a good example. Like I think like the universal energy, not the universal energy, the common energy for humans is ki, or chi. Like that's actually a 50-50 split, and they're a little bit different. But yeah, for the sake of thing, we're going to say ki or chi. And then you use something called soul fire. Each one of those energies has different inherent properties to them. But you might be able to teach someone your omega flare thing. Based on each person's manipulation scores, or how well they're proficient with manipulation, is how well they'll be able to adapt that to their own personal they're like I said, they're kind of like their own personal arsenal. So like you being able to be a strong manipulator means you'll be able to learn other techniques more efficiently, and that's what it comes down to. Is like energy in its raw state can be very potent. Like you possess what is a very destructive energy, and now that you're in an awakened state, like you've kind of awakened that destructive nature, to the point where you'll like if you as a legion are fighting an unawakened legion, you can actually probably bang with them just straight blast. Like an average legion just can't fire a blast at all. Like that's just not something they can do. But they can tank those energy blasts like no other. But because you're awakened, like you can probably just straight beat a legion with energy blast at this point, based on where you are with your manipulation skills. And like I said, that's just like, that's if you're one of those people who if you're like a fighter who's got like one or two techniques, but then like most of it is your fighting and like I said, just kind of like you're firing your blast, your basic blast, then manipulation might not, projection is going to be more important than manipulation. But if you're someone who has a lot of abilities and techniques that you want to focus on, then manipulation becomes a bit more important to you. Um, that's pretty much those three. They're pretty self-explanatory, I think, to someone who is familiar with real world in general. Like I said, again, if there's any other questions, feel free to let me know. We'll clarify anything that you feel like I might have missed there. I think we'll go into the third part here because we're making pretty good time. The third pillar is called your Gon, or your third eye. This is like the extrasensory perceptions that you get when it comes to being awakened, or when it comes to being like having your soul force kind of out and about there. So there's three classifications for this: reading, seeking, and obscuring. Reading is your ability to understand the nature of stuff. So this is one of those things where there's not quite as much mystery to an awakened individual. Like if you're being affected by something, you can use your soul force to read what's happening to you, in the sense that it's coming from this gate and it seems like it's of this nature. So like if you see something from the mind gate, and like you might be able to discern like that it's like an illusion technique, like a visual prowess kind of technique. Whereas if you see something coming from like the chest or stomach and it's being focused through the hands, like you might be able to put together that's a very powerful like blast of some sorts. But like the better you are at reading, the better you are at understanding the nature of what your opposition is. And obviously it's really valuable for a first time fight. Like if you have like established opponents or anything like that, reading might not be as important because you'll kind of know what they do. But like the first time you're coming up to someone and they start to pull some stuff up, like they start to fire some blasts. Here's a good example. Based on the session that you got in, whenever you saw him like raise his hammer over his head, and it's like you saw it there, and it's one of those ones where he held that position. He didn't hold it long, but like he held it as you came in to attack him. If you had your third eye awakened at that point, you would have seen like the energy erupting from its core, and you would have seen the nature of it being electrical or lightning based in nature, and you would have saw it like kind of channeling into his hands. Like you would have seen it like inside of him before you would have ever seen it outside. So you don't know to prepare yourself better for that kind of thing. Reading is one of those things where you have to be active about it. Like the DM is not going to say, "Okay, player, you see this, and this." Or like, "DM, I try to read what's going on," and it's usually something you'll do at the start of the fight, or if you have a split second where they're trying to, they look like they're trying to form up a technique. Your ability to read them will be how well you understand what's coming towards you. So, in the whole knowledge is power kind of thing. Like, yeah, that's pretty much what reading is. Like being able to understand what you're going up against, the nature of it, and like even like understanding techniques of other people, like what they're able to do, the signs they might make to do it, to like they might weave to perform it, where it comes from as far as like the origin gate, like all that stuff kind of matters. And it's like you'll see things kind of come together, like, oh, like even like when you kind of read yourself and understand, like you understand why your annihilation blast is so much more powerful, because it's not straight from like the gates in your hand. Like you basically, I don't want to say you Kamehameha, but like you do something like that where you basically channel through one of your core gates, and then you build it up in your hands to get it to be much more potent. So that's reading. Seeking is like your sense power thing. Like you can seek people out. You can see them without seeing them. That kind of thing. Like there's you can sense energy signatures. This specifically with you deals with wrong thing. Your sense power, sense expression, like your ability to seek out, like that's basically an amplified version of reading and seeking. So it's like I won't call you an expert at it yet, but like you have a technique that specifically does that. And it's like I said, it's one of those ones where I don't want to say it's a universal thing that awakened people do, but it's something that they usually figure out in, I don't want to say short order, but like in a reasonable period of time. Like it's just something that you'll start to see things, and then you can probably, if you're of reasonable intelligence, can make the leap like, oh, this is happening, so this is that, this means this and this. Uh, yeah, so seeking in that point is pretty straightforward. Like the better you are at seeking, the better you can track people, the further you can expand your senses. So it's like, you might be able to have like your field of vision being your seeking range, but like, the more you practice it, you might be able to go well beyond what your eyes are capable of seeing to be able to sense someone. And then even then, whereas like if you were interacting with them and they teleported away or something like that, your ability to seek them will be to basically to stay locked onto that energy presence and then go there. Like it's not just like it's a universal like 360 degree. This is how far you can go. Whenever you're locked onto someone, you kind of have a better idea of where they are, and like it comes into play when like people are very fast like that. Like if you're very good at seeking, like you're not going to get snuck up on or anything like that. Like you'll sense them before you'll ever see them, that kind of thing. But like I said, I don't think you guys are so much in that speed realm where it's that crazy yet, but it's something to kind of like look forward to. And obscuring, like this is the tricky one. It's the most challenging of these three, and it's your ability to basically keep things from other people, like to keep that information from someone else. Specifically, like the nature of your abilities, your overall power level, like how much you're infused, stuff like that. It's like basically how it's not okay. So it is obscuring like that, but it's also how intimidating or how overwhelming your energy presence is. Like there's two ways to go about it. One is like kind of obscuring things, and then the other is kind of overwhelming things. So it's like if there's a large power gap, that obscuring tends to be more of an overwhelming thing. Like where you sense someone, it's like, oh, player, he's like more powerful than you. Well, DM, how much more? I don't know, player, like somewhere between like the Earth and the Sun. And it's like, oh, like yeah, that's a pretty big gap, DM. It's like, yeah, but that's like you can't pinpoint it down. Like the better you get at obscuring, the better. Sorry, that would be a reading or seeking check, reading check. But like the better you are at obscuring your power, like hiding it from someone, the better off you are at getting those surprise attacks off. So there's an ebb and a flow to it. Like it's one of those things. The more you like, if you train more on reading and someone trains more on obscuring, they might cancel each other out. Uh, but like if you're the position you're in, you're not very much of an obscuring type person. Like it doesn't behoove you because it's very difficult to just come out and instantly end you because you're already so durable. Like it's one of those things like you're better off, and this isn't something the DM is saying this is how you have to go, but like probably you would be better served by reading and seeking rather than obscuring. Now, like I said, if you want to be like a more stealthy type character, if you want to be someone who keeps things from others, like yeah, I mean, you can obviously take a balanced route too, where you try to like level all three at the same time. But like specialization wise, like you're probably more adept at reading and seeking than you would be obscuring. But obscuring is a thing that you can do, and it creates that ebb and flow as far as things go. So like, don't feel like that if you read someone and it's wrong or you can't read them, that it's necessarily a failure on your part. They might have just trained incredibly hard to obscure themselves. Yeah. So that was actually pretty easy. That's your Gon. That's your third eye. Like it deals with your extrasensory perception of all things, and like I said, there's benefits to training each one. Like training your Akari is boosting the intensity of your power. Training your gates is your boost to your overall power level, and training your Gon is kind of it's more on the subtle levels. Like it's how well you understand. It's like I guess it's like the intelligence thing where it's like you can, if you're a warrior, you train your body, your mind, but you also train your technique. So training your gates would be like training your body. Training your, like, for your techniques, like how to swing a sword and everything. Like, so the body would be like your push-ups, your running and stuff like that, making sure you're physically fit enough to perform the task needed. Your Akari would be like training your techniques, like how you fight. like how to swing a sword, how to like strike and riposte and all that kind of stuff. And then training your mind for the battle, like how to read your opponent and stuff like that. That would be your gun. That'd be your third eye. So like that's kind of like how you can kind of associate that training. Uh, the DM will probably say, not with 100% certainty, it maybe changed a little bit, but um, you've obviously spent time on all three of them, so like you're not a complete newbie when it comes to anything, but based on your character, you're probably going to be a little bit more proficient with your third eye than you are the other two. Uh, we'll see how they kind of play out. I won't give you any hard numbers at this point, but yeah, that's just something going into things. How about where you'll be? Uh, we're not going to get into the classes yet. Uh, you've basically theorized that there are several like it's beyond like just being someone who's awakened. Like it seems like within that awakened state, people seem to express themselves differently, and they're not like it's not like a hard thing where it's like, oh, you're this class, you can't do this or that. It's just like you're better at some things and worse than others inherently. But it seems like people tend to fall into those couple things or a couple classes. We'll get into those later though. We'll cut off there. And again, as always, any questions, hit the DM up and we'll go from there.